3 weeks passed at the academy. Jake learned to use galactic standard weapons and equipment. He studied alien languages and military tactics. Every day brought new challenges designed to push students to their limits. The other students struggled. With different parts of the training, Zektar excelled at combat exercises, but had trouble with technical studies. Valona mastered every academic subject, but found physical training difficult. The insect beings moved well in zero gravity, but struggled when artificial gravity was increased. Jake did well enough in everything. Not the best, but not the worst either. His instructors wrote reports that called him adequate and unremarkable. The other students stopped paying attention to him after the first week. He became background noise. That changed when Commander Thoxel called all the special operations students to the main briefing room. "Your real training begins now," the massive Ursoid announced. Behind him, a holographic display showed a planet that looked like a nightmare. The world was mostly red and black, with swirling storms that covered entire continents. "This is Kethmer. You will spend the next 2 weeks on its surface." The display zoomed in to show jagged mountains, vast deserts of black sand and forests, of crystalline trees that looked sharp enough to cut flesh. Temperature readings scrolled past, showing extremes that ranged from freezing to boiling within the same day. "Kethmer has gravity twice your galactic standard," Commander Thoxel continued. "The atmosphere contains enough toxic compounds to kill most species within hours without protection. The native life forms view everything else as food. The weather changes without warning and can trap you in storms that last for days." Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jake noticed that even Zektar looked concerned. "Each of you will be dropped at a different location on the planet's surface. You must survive alone for 14 standard days, while completing a series of objectives across the continent. You will carry minimal supplies, no communication devices except for emergency extraction beacons." The holographic display changed. To show a list of previous academy classes, numbers appeared next to each year showing success and failure rates. 40% of students who attempt this exercise require emergency extraction, Commander Thoxel said. Some suffer permanent injuries. Others experience psychological breakdown that ends their military careers. A few, he paused, a few do not survive even with emergency extraction. The room became very quiet. Jake could hear other students breathing harder. Some whispered to each other in worried voices. Those who complete the exercise join the ranks of elite warriors throughout the galaxy. Those who fail are transferred to standard military programs or discharged entirely. Commander Thoxel's black eyes scanned the room. Anyone who wishes to withdraw from the Special Operations Program may do so now without penalty. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Very well. You have 48 hours to prepare. Choose your equipment carefully. Study the planet data thoroughly. Make peace with whoever you pray to. The commander turned to leave, then stopped.
Oh.
One more thing. The record for completing this exercise is held by a Saurian warrior who finished in 11 days. No student has ever broken that record. Zektar sat up straighter at this news. His yellow eyes gleamed with excitement. After dismissal, the students scattered to begin their preparations. Jake went to the equipment bay where standard survival gear was available. Other students were already there, examining weapons and tools. Selected heavy armor plating and powerful energy weapons. His natural strength let him carry equipment that would crush smaller species. "I will break that record," he told anyone who would listen. Saurian warriors are bred for worlds like Kethmer, Valona. Chose mostly electronic devices. Scanners to analyze the environment. Computers to calculate optimal routes. Communication equipment to study the planet's electromagnetic patterns. "Intelligence defeats brute force," she said quietly. The insect beings picked climbing gear and tunneling tools. Their species were natural diggers who could create shelter anywhere. Other students selected equipment that matched their species. Natural advantages. Jake looked at the available gear for a long time. Finally, he picked items that made the other students laugh. Simple cloth clothing instead of armor. Basic hiking. Boots instead of powered leg braces. Standard issue water filtration system instead of expensive atmospheric processors. Nutrition bars that looked like compressed cardboard instead of species-specific dietary supplements. "That is your survival kit?" asked one of the insect beings. "You will die in the first day, maybe," Jake said. He was testing the weight distribution of his pack. "But this stuff is light. I can move fast if I need to." Zektar shook his massive head. "Speed means nothing if you cannot survive the environment. You should choose better protection," "I'll manage," Jake replied. That evening, Jake sat in his dormitory room studying the planet data. Kethmer was worse than Commander Thoxel had described. The toxic atmosphere would burn exposed skin. Gravity would crush bones if someone fell wrong. The native predators included things called crystal wolves that hunted in coordinated packs, and stone serpents that could camouflage perfectly with the rocky terrain. But Jake noticed things in the data that others might miss. The planet's day-night cycle was 26 hours, close to Earth normal. The atmospheric pressure was similar to Earth's mountains. The temperature swings were extreme, but followed predictable patterns based on elevation and terrain. Most importantly, the gravity was only twice galactic standard. Roar species adapted to low-gravity worlds that would be crushing. But Earth's gravity was already higher than galactic standard. Twice galactic standard was only about 60% higher than what Jake had grown up with. Jake closed the data files and began a series of stretching exercises. His muscles felt good. His heart rate was steady. His breathing was calm. Tomorrow, he would find out what a human could do on a world that broke alien warriors. The next morning, all the students gathered in the launch bay. Transport shuttles waited to carry them to Kethmer's surface. Each student would be dropped at a different coordinate to begin their survival test. "Commander?" Thoxel checked each student's equipment personally. When he reached Jake, the Ursoid frowned at the human's light pack. "This is insufficient protection for Kethmer," he said. "It's what I need," Jake replied. "The planet will kill you in hours with such poor preparation." Jake met the commander's stare. "And I guess I better not let it." Other students boarded their shuttles with heavy packs and serious expressions. Some looked confident. Others looked scared. A few looked like they were going to their own execution. Jake climbed into his assigned shuttle with his light pack and simple gear. The pilot was a short, gray-skinned alien who spoke in clicks and whistles. "First time on a death world, human?" the pilot asked in heavily accented galactic standard. "First time on this death world," Jake said. The pilot made a sound that might have been laughter. "I give you 12 hours before you activate your emergency beacon. No offense. Humans are new. You do not know what real worlds are like yet." The shuttle lifted off and headed toward Kethmer's angry red surface. Through the window, Jake could see storm systems that covered areas larger than Earth's continents. Lightning flashed constantly between the clouds. The planet looked like it was at war with itself. Jake checked his equipment one more time. Water filtration system, nutrition bars, and basic medical supplies, simple tools. Everything he needed and nothing he did not. "Beginning descent to drop zone 7, the pilot announced. "Atmospheric entry in 3 minutes." The shuttle began to shake as it hit Kethmer's upper atmosphere. Jake felt the gravity increasing as they descended. By the time they reached the surface, he would be carrying 60% more weight than normal. He had carried heavier packs during basic training on Earth. The shuttle touched down on a plateau of black rock surrounded by jagged peaks. The pilot opened the rear hatch, and toxic wind immediately filled the cabin. "This is your stop, human," the pilot said. "Try not to die too quickly. Makes paperwork complicated." Jake shouldered his pack and walked toward the hatch. The air tasted like metal and burned his throat even through the breathing mask. The gravity pulled at his bones. The wind tried to knock him over. He stepped onto Kethmer's surface and began walking toward his first objective marker. Behind him, the shuttle lifted off and disappeared into the storm-filled sky. Jake was alone on a world that had broken 40% of the galaxy's best warriors. He smiled and started running. Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the metal floor of Nexus Prime Station. The gravity here felt different from Earth, lighter. He had to be careful not to bounce when he walked. Around him, dozens of alien beings moved. Through the massive docking bay, some walked on 4 legs, Others had wings. A few floated in the air without touching the ground at all. The Galactic Defense Academy was the most important military school in known space. Only the best warriors from each world got to study here. Jake was the first human ever accepted into their special operations program. He should have felt proud. Instead, he felt like everyone was staring at him. They were staring at him. A tall, reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes looked Jake up and down. The alien was at least 7 feet tall, with muscles that bulged under his uniform. This had to be Zektar, the Saurian student Jake had heard about. Saurians were famous across the galaxy as the strongest warriors. Their homeworld was full of massive predators and constant warfare. Every Saurian child learned to fight before they could properly walk. Next to Zektar stood a pale, thin creature that seemed to glow with soft light. She had 4 arms and silver hair that moved like it was underwater. Valona was a Celestian. Her people were known for having the biggest brains in the galaxy. They could solve math problems that would take human computers hours to finish. Other students filled the docking bay. Jake saw a bear-like creature covered in thick fur. 3 insect beings with shiny black shells clicked their mandibles as they talked. A group of floating jellyfish creatures pulsed with different colors as they communicated through light patterns. Jake felt very ordinary compared to all of them. He was just under 6 feet tall with brown hair and brown eyes. His muscles were decent, but nothing special. He wore the standard academy uniform that looked exactly like everyone else's, but somehow he still stood out as different. "So you are the human," Zektar said. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. "I expected you to be bigger." "Most humans are about my size," Jake replied. He kept his voice calm and friendly. Zektar's yellow eyes narrowed. "The report said humans come from a world called Earth. The galactic database lists it as a Class M planet with mild conditions, comfortable temperatures, plenty of water. Major predators." He made a sound that might have been laughter. "Sounds like paradise compared to most worlds." Other students started to gather around them. Jake could feel their eyes examining him like he was some kind of museum display. A few whispered to each other in languages he did not understand. "Your gravity is only slightly higher than standard," said Valona. Her voice was musical and soft. "Your atmosphere has a normal oxygen mix. Your largest predators are smaller than most species' house pets. How does such a world produce warriors?" Jake shrugged. "I guess we make do with what we have." This made several students laugh. Not the good kind of laughter that came from sharing a joke. It's the kind that came from thinking something was funny when it was not supposed to be. "Make do," repeated one of the insect beings. "That is rich. Wait until you see what real training looks like, soft skin." A loud bell rang through the docking bay. All the students immediately stood straighter and faced the same direction. Jake quickly did the same. Commander Thoxel entered the bay with heavy footsteps that echoed off the metal walls. He was an Ursoid, one of the bear-like species Jake had seen earlier.
No, but
where the student had looked big, Commander Thoxel looked massive. He stood at least 8 feet tall, with claws as long as kitchen knives. Scars covered his dark fur. Small black eyes seemed to look right through everyone. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," Commander Thoxel growled. "You are here because your worlds think you are special. They think you have what it takes to join the elite forces that protect our galaxy from threats beyond our borders." He started walking slowly in front of the assembled students. When he stopped in front of Jake, the human could smell something like wet fur and old metal. "Most of you will fail," the commander continued. "The weak ones will break in the first month. The ones who are merely strong will break in the second month. Only the truly exceptional will graduate from this program." His eyes fixed on Jake. "I see we have our first human student. Earth is new to our alliance. They requested a spot in our program as part of their integration process." He paused. "I wonder if they understand what they have signed up for." The other students shifted slightly. Jake could feel their attention on him again. Some looked curious. Others looked like they were already planning his funeral. "The training here is designed for species that evolved on worlds where survival meant constant struggle," Commander Thoxel said. "Worlds where the weak died young and only the strong lived to reproduce. Worlds where every day was a battle against the environment itself. He leaned down slightly so his massive head was closer to Jake's level. Tell me, human, what makes you think you can survive training designed for warriors from Deathworlds? Jake met the commander's stare without flinching. I guess we'll find out, sir. Commander Thoxel studied Jake's face for a long moment. Then he straightened up and continued his speech. Your first month will be basic conditioning. You will learn to operate in different gravity levels. You will adapt to various atmospheric conditions. You will master the use of standard galactic equipment. Showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. Those who survive the first month will face the real test. After the commander dismissed them, the students began moving toward the academy's main section. Jake walked beside his assigned group. Listening to them talk about their training back home, Zektar described hunting creatures the size of Earth's biggest dinosaurs, with nothing but claws and teeth. Valona talked about mental exercises that would drive most species insane. The insect beings mentioned fighting battles in the vacuum of space without protective suits. Jake said nothing about his own background. There was no point in trying to impress them with stories about running marathons or climbing mountains. Compared to hunting space monsters and surviving in deadly environments, human achievements seemed pretty small. But as they walked through the station's corridors, Jake noticed something the others had missed. The artificial gravity here was set to galactic standard, which was about 20% higher than Earth normal. The other students moved normally, adapted to their own world's conditions. Jake also moved normally, but he was the only one who was not even breathing hard. His heart rate had not increased at all. If anything, the higher gravity felt comfortable, like wearing a weighted vest during a workout back home. Maybe Earth was not as mild as the galactic database suggested. Maybe humans had a few surprises that would not show up in any report. Jake smiled to himself. As they reached the dormitory section, this was going to be interesting. Jake ran across the black rocks of Kethmer for 6 hours straight. His breathing stayed steady. His heart beat at a normal pace. The heavy gravity that should have crushed him felt like wearing a weighted training vest. Above him, orbital monitoring stations tracked every student on the planet's surface. Dr. Kyrolin watched the displays with growing confusion. Most students had found shelter within the first hour. They moved carefully, conserving energy for the long trial ahead. Their heart rates spiked whenever they encountered obstacles. Our stress levels showed red warning indicators. The human readings made no sense. Commander Thoxel, Dr. Kyrolin called across the monitoring room. You need to see this. The massive Ursoid approached the medical station. On the screen, Jake's vital signs scrolled past in steady green lines. His heart rate was elevated but stable. His breathing patterns showed no distress. His core temperature remained normal despite the planet's harsh conditions. What am I looking at? Commander Thoxel growled. Human has been moving continuously for 6 hours. No rest stops, no shelter breaks. His biological indicators suggest he could continue at this pace indefinitely. Commander Thoxel studied the display. Equipment malfunction. The sensors must be damaged. I checked twice. All sensors are functioning normally. Dr. Kyrolin pulled up comparison data. Look at the Saurian student. Zektar's readings painted a different picture. His massive strength let him smash through obstacles that would stop other species. But his heart rate spiked dangerously during exertion. He rested frequently to let his body recover. His stress hormones showed constant elevation. Saurians are built for explosive power, Dr. Kyrolin explained. Short bursts of incredible ability followed by recovery periods. The human shows the opposite pattern. Consistent output with minimal recovery needs. On Kethmer's surface, Jake reached his first objective marker. Metal beacon sat on a ridge overlooking a valley filled with crystalline trees. According to his instructions, he needed to retrieve a data chip from the beacon and continue to the next marker 30 kilometers away. As Jake approached the beacon, movement caught his eye. Crystal wolves emerged from between the sharp trees below. 6 of them, each the size of Earth's biggest dogs but made of living mineral that reflected the planet's red sunlight. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading out to surround the ridge. Jake had read about crystal wolves in the Academy database. They were Kethmer's apex predators. It's fast enough to catch flying creatures, strong enough to bite through metal, and smart enough to use complex hunting strategies. Of all, they never gave up once they selected prey. The wolves began climbing the ridge from different directions. Their crystal claws sparked against the black rock. Jake could hear them communicating through high-pitched sounds that cut through the toxic wind in the monitoring station. Alerts began flashing on Jake's display. Dr. Chiron leaned forward, expecting to see panic responses. Instead, Jake's heart rate increased only slightly. His stress hormones remained normal. His brain activity showed patterns of calm calculation rather than fear. He is going to activate his emergency beacon, Commander Thoxel said. Crystal wolves have never been defeated by Academy students. They're too fast and too coordinated. Jake grabbed the data chip from the beacon and looked down at the approaching wolves. They had cut off every escape route except one. A narrow path led down the opposite side of the ridge toward open ground. The wolves were herding him exactly where they wanted him to go. Jake started running down the path. The wolves howled with excitement and gave chase.
Loud.
Their crystal bodies caught the light as they bounded across the rocks with incredible speed. Within minutes, they would catch their prey and tear him apart. But Jake did not run like prey. He ran like a predator. His pace was steady and controlled. He chose his footing carefully to maintain speed without wasting energy. When the path curved, he took the optimal line to preserve momentum. His breathing remained deep and regular despite the toxic atmosphere. The wolves began to close the distance. Their explosive speed let them gain ground quickly. But after 10 minutes of chasing, something strange began to happen. The lead wolf started breathing hard. Crystal creatures were not supposed to need much oxygen, but this one was gasping. Coordination became less perfect. Stumbled once on the rocky ground. Jake maintained his pace. He showed no signs of slowing down. After 20 minutes, 2 of the wolves dropped out of the chase entirely. They lay on the rocks with their tongues hanging out, their crystal bodies steaming in the toxic air. The remaining 4 continued pursuing. But their formation was breaking apart. In orbit, Dr. Chiron stared at her instruments in disbelief. Commander, the human is running the wolves to exhaustion. That is impossible, Commander, Thoxel said. Crystal wolves can maintain top speed for hours. Apparently not when chasing a human. After 30 minutes, only 2 wolves remained in pursuit. They were barely keeping up with Jake's steady pace. Their perfect coordination had collapsed into you. Desperate scrambling across the rocks, Jake reached flat ground and increased his speed slightly. Not a sprint, just a faster, sustainable pace. The last 2 wolves fell further behind with each step. After 40 minutes of chase, they stopped entirely and watched their prey disappear into the distance. Jake had literally run the galaxy's most feared predators into complete exhaustion. Dr. Chiron began pulling up every piece of data about Earth and human physiology in the galactic database. What she found made her hands shake. Commander, we need to discuss the human world classification immediately. Later, Doctor, I am watching something impossible. On the surface, Jake continued toward his second objective marker. His steady pace never varied. His vital signs remained stable. He had been moving for 8 hours straight through conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Other students were struggling with basic survival. Velina had found shelter in a cave but was having trouble with the gravity. Every movement was agony for her delicate frame. Insect beings were digging emergency shelters to hide from the toxic storms. Even Zekta was resting frequently, his powerful body overwhelmed by the planet's constant hostility. Jake ran through a landscape that looked like the surface of hell and acted like he was jogging through a park. By the end of the first day, 3 students had already activated their emergency beacons. The toxic atmosphere had burned their respiratory systems despite protective equipment. The gravity had caused internal injuries. The stress had triggered psychological breakdowns. Jake reached his second objective marker as Kethmer's sun set. Behind the storm clouds, He retrieved another data chip and consulted his map. The third marker was 50 kilometers away across a desert of black sand, where temperatures would drop below freezing during the night. Most students would seek shelter and wait for daylight. Jake checked his water supply and nutrition bars. Everything looked good. He started running toward the desert in the monitoring station. Dr. Kyrillin finally understood what she was watching. She pulled up files that had been classified since first contact with Earth. "Commander Thoxel," she said quietly, "Earth is not a mild world." "What are you talking about, Doctor?" "And the galactic database is wrong. Earth is a Class 12 death. World, extreme gravity, hostile atmosphere, massive predators, constant warfare between species." Dr. Kyrillin's voice was barely a whisper. "Humans are not soft creatures from a paradise planet. They are apex endurance predators from one of the most dangerous worlds ever discovered." Commander Thoxel looked at Jake's readings again. Steady heartbeat, normal breathing, optimal body temperature. After running for 10 hours straight on a planet that broke veteran warriors? "Impossible," he said. "Look at the data, Commander. Humans evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion. They can regulate their body temperature through water evaporation. They can process oxygen efficiently in thin atmospheres. They can ignore pain and fatigue that would incapacitate other species." On Kethmer's surface, Jake ran into the freezing desert night. Behind him, crystal wolves howled in frustration. Ahead of him, new challenges waited in the darkness. He smiled and picked up the pace slightly. This was just getting interesting. Day 8 on Kethmer brought the worst storm in 50 years. Winds screamed across the planet's surface at speeds that could tear apart metal structures. Lightning struck the ground every few seconds. The toxic atmosphere became so thick that breathing equipment started failing. In the orbital monitoring station, emergency alarms rang constantly. Student after student activated their distress beacons. The storms were too powerful. The conditions too deadly. Even the strongest warriors had reached their breaking point. Zektar lasted longer than most. His massive saurian body had carried him through 7 days of hell. He smashed through obstacles with raw strength. He fought off predators with claws and teeth. He endured pain that would kill smaller species. But on day 8, the storm found him. Zektar had taken shelter in a cave when the wind started. For 6 hours, he waited for the weather to pass. But the storm grew stronger instead of weaker. The cave began to flood with toxic gases heavier than air. His breathing equipment started making warning sounds. "I cannot breathe," Zektar spoke. Into his emergency communicator, his voice was weak and strained. "The filters are failing. I need extraction." The rescue shuttle found him unconscious on the cave floor. His huge body was barely breathing. The medic said he would survive, but his trial was over. Lilona faced her own crisis that same day. The brilliant Celestian had used her intelligence to survive longer than anyone expected. She calculated optimal routes between objectives. She predicted weather patterns. She found the safest shelters and the best water sources, but intelligence could not overcome the limitations of her fragile body. The heavy gravity was slowly crushing her internal organs. Her forearms shook constantly from muscle fatigue. When the storm hit, Lilona was crossing an exposed ridge toward her final objective marker. The winds knocked her down repeatedly. Each fall on the hard rocks caused new injuries. "I miscalculated," she whispered into her communicator. "Storm is stronger than predicted. I cannot reach shelter." A pause filled with labored breathing, requesting emergency extraction. Her rescue took 3 hours because of the dangerous weather. The medics found her wedged between 2 rocks, barely conscious and badly injured by the end of day 8. Jake Morrison and a heavily armored insect being named Clickstar, who had dug deep tunnels to hide from the storms. Commander Thoxel stared at the monitoring displays in disbelief. 23 students had started the trial. 21 had been extracted for medical emergencies or equipment failures. The 2 survivors represented the absolute limits of what galactic species could endure. "Where is the human now?" Commander Thoxel asked. Dr. Kyrillin checked her instruments. Grid reference 847 north. He is still moving toward the final objective marker. Still moving? In this storm? According to the sensors, he has not stopped moving in 8 days. Not once, Commander. On Kethmer's surface, Jake ran through the worst weather he had ever experienced. The toxic wind felt like being sandblasted with acid. Lightning strikes turned the air electric and made his hair stand up. The ground shook from thunder that sounded like explosions, but Jake had experienced bad weather before. Oklahoma tornadoes, Montana blizzards, Florida hurricanes. The storms on Earth had taught him that bad weather was temporary, just had to keep moving until it passed. His breathing equipment had failed 6 hours ago. He was filtering the toxic air through a piece of cloth torn from his shirt. It was not perfect protection, but it was enough. His throat burned and his eyes watered, but he could still breathe. The heavy gravity that crushed other species felt normal now. His body had adapted during the first day. His muscles had grown stronger. His bones had become denser. What started as a burden had become an advantage that let him move faster than the monitoring stations thought possible. Jake reached the final objective marker as the storm began to weaken. A metal spire stuck out of the ground on top of the planet's highest mountain. According to his instructions, touching the spire would complete the trial and signal for pickup. But Jake was not alone on the mountain. Clickstar had emerged from underground tunnels nearby. The insect being was covered in thick armor that had protected him from the worst of Kethmer's conditions. His 6 legs gave him stability on rough terrain. His natural digging ability had let him create safe shelters everywhere he went. Human Clickstar clicked through his translator device. Should not be alive. My species evolved on a world worse than this. We are born for such conditions. Jake walked toward the objective spire without answering. His steady pace never changed. His breathing remained controlled despite the toxic air and thin atmosphere at high altitude. Stop, Clickstar commanded. I will reach the spire first. I have endured this trial longer. I am stronger. You hid in holes for 8 days, Jake said. Calmly, I never stopped moving. Clickstar's mandibles clicked with anger. Hiding is surviving. You waste energy. You expose yourself to danger. You will collapse before reaching the spire. The insect being was bigger and heavier. His armor made him look like a walking tank. Move aside, Jake said. Make me soft skin. Jake looked at Clickstar for a moment. Then he stepped around the insect being and touched the spire. Immediately, both of their emergency beacons activated. Success signals went out to the orbital stations. The trial was complete. Impossible, Clickstar whispered. You moved like you were not even tired. I am tired, Jake admitted. But tired does not mean stopped. In orbit, the monitoring stations recorded Jake's final statistics. 8 days, 14 hours, 37 minutes of continuous movement. No rest periods longer. Then 5 minutes, no equipment failures. No medical emergencies. No psychological breakdown. He had completed the Kethmer, who quit after 1 day. Dr. Kyrillin ran the numbers 3 times to make sure they were accurate. The human has broken every existing record. It's by a significant margin. Commander Thoxel studied Jake's final medical readings. Heart rate was elevated but stable. Breathing was labored but controlled. Body temperature was normal. Stress hormones were present but not dangerous levels. Doctor, how is this possible? Humans are endurance hunters, Commander. They evolved to chase prey across vast distances until the prey died from exhaustion. Their bodies are designed for sustained activity over days or weeks. What we consider impossible endurance, they consider normal hunting behavior. The rescue shuttles landed on Kethmer's peak as the storms finally cleared. Yes. Jake walked to his assigned shuttle without help. He moved slowly and carefully, but under his own power. Clickstar had to be carried to his shuttle by medical personnel. 8 days underground had weakened his legs. His armor was cracked and damaged. He looked like he had been through a war. During the flight back to Nexus Prime, the shuttle pilot kept glancing at Jake in the rear compartment. The human was eating nutrition bars and drinking water like he was on a camping trip, instead of returning from the galaxy's most dangerous survival trial. First human on Kethmer, the pilot said. How did it feel? Jake finished, chewing and swallowed. Not bad. The gravity was a little heavy. The air was not great, but the weather was interesting. Interesting. The pilot laughed nervously. Yeah, that storm almost destroyed our orbital stations. We lost 6 monitoring satellites to lightning strikes. Storms pass, Jake said simply. You just have to keep moving until they do. The shuttle docked at Nexus Prime as news of Jake's record-breaking performance spread throughout the Academy. Students and instructors gathered in the landing bay to see the human who had accomplished the impossible. Jake stepped off the shuttle, carrying his light pack and wearing his simple clothes. He looked tired but alert. His equipment was damaged and dirty, but still functional. He walked with the steady pace of someone who could keep going for days if necessary, Commander. Commander Thoxel waited at the bottom of the shuttle ramp. The massive Ursoid studied Jake's condition with professional interest. How do you feel, human? Tired. Jake answered honestly, but good tired. Like after a long workout. Commander Thoxel's expression was unreadable. The medical team needs to examine you. Standard procedure after Kethmer trials. Yes, sir. The weak human from the soft world had just accomplished something that veteran warriors considered impossible. The galaxy's understanding of Earth and its people would never be the same. The medical examination room on Nexus Prime buzzed with activity. Dr. Chiron and 3 other specialists ran every test they could think of on Jake Morrison. Blood analysis, bone density scans, muscle tissue samples, brain activity monitors. They needed to understand how a human had accomplished the impossible. Jake sat patiently on the examination table while alien doctors poked and prodded him with various instruments. His vital signs had returned to normal within an hour of leaving Kethmer. His injuries were minor scratches and bruises that were already healing. Most shocking of all, he showed no signs of the psychological trauma that usually affected Kethmer survivors. This makes no scientific sense, Dr. Chiron muttered as she reviewed the test results. Your muscle fibers show minimal damage. Your stress hormones are lower than baseline. Your bone density has actually increased during the trial. I feel fine, Jake said. Maybe a little hungry. In the Academy's main briefing room, Commander Thoxel faced the most difficult report of his military career. Admiral Nexera, the station commander, reviewed Jake's performance data with increasing amazement. The insectoid admiral's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays that showed Jake's route across Kethmer. Explain to me how a species from a Class M world just shattered every endurance record in galactic military history. Admiral Nexera clicked through her translator. Ma'am, I believe our classification of Earth was incorrect, Commander Thoxel said carefully. Dr. Chiron has uncovered evidence that humans come from what we would consider a death world. Okay, a death world that produces warriors who can run. Crystal wolves to exhaustion? Yes, ma'am. Admiral Nexera studied the data more carefully. Jake had covered over 400 kilometers of hostile terrain in 8 days, while carrying supplies and completing objectives. The previous record holder had taken 11 days to cover half that distance. Commander, I want a full review of human physiology and Earth's planetary conditions. If we have been wrong about this species, we need to know immediately.
While the
officers discussed Jake's performance, word spread throughout the Academy. Students who had mocked the weak human now whispered in awed voices about the Deathworlder who never stopped moving. The story grew with each telling until Jake became a figure of legend and fear. Zektar visited Jake in the Medical Bay 3. Days after the trial ended, the massive Saurian moved slowly, his body still recovering from respiratory damage caused by Kethmer's toxic atmosphere. He found Jake reading Academy training manuals while eating what looked like an enormous meal. Human, Zektar said, his voice rough from throat injuries. I owe you an apology. Jake looked up from his reading. For what? I called you weak. I said you came from a soft world. I was wrong. Zektar sat down heavily in a chair designed. For large species, my people are warriors. We fight battles that last hours or days. But you... you fight battles that last weeks. I was not fighting, Jake said. I was just moving. Just moving, Zektar repeated. For 8 days without stopping. Through conditions that broke me in 7 days. He leaned forward. Tell me. About your world? What kind of place creates warriors like you? Jake thought about how to explain Earth to an alien. My planet has lots of different environments. Hot deserts, cold mountains, thick jungles, wide oceans. Humans learn to live in all of them. That is not unusual. Many worlds have environmental variety. But on Earth, we had to walk everywhere. For millions of years, humans had no machines or vehicles. If we wanted to go somewhere, we walked. If we wanted to hunt, we walked until we found prey. And then we chased it until it got tired and stopped running. Zektar's yellow eyes widened. You hunted by exhausting your prey? Some humans still do. We call it persistence hunting. You follow an animal for hours or days until it cannot run anymore. Then you walk up and kill it. Jake shrugged. It works pretty well. This is normal for humans. Running long distances? Sure, most humans can do it if they train a little. Some can run for days without stopping. Zektar sat in silence for several minutes, processing this information. Finally, he spoke again. Human, would you teach me your training methods? I can try. But your body is built differently than mine. You are stronger and faster, but for short periods. I am weaker and slower, but for long periods. I understand, but perhaps I can learn to last longer, to push through pain and exhaustion, like you do. Jake smiled. That is not really training. That is just deciding not to quit. Valona visited the next day. The delicate Celestian moved with careful precision, her 4 arms supporting her fragile frame as she walked. She carried a datapad filled with calculations and research notes. Have been studying your performance, she said without introduction. The numbers are fascinating. What numbers? Energy efficiency, caloric consumption, oxygen processing, heat regulation. Your body operates like a perfectly designed endurance machine. Valona activated her datapad and showed Jake's complex graphs and charts. Most species burn energy in explosive bursts. You burn energy at a steady, sustainable rate. I just tried not to waste energy on unnecessary things. But how? How do you maintain psychological focus for so long? Most beings experience mental breakdown after extended stress. You showed no signs of cognitive decline, even after 8 days of constant activity. Jake considered the question. I guess I just accepted that it was going to be hard and kept going anyway. Pain and tiredness are temporary. Quitting is permanent. Valona made notes on her datapad. Remarkable. Your species has evolved psychological resistance to despair and exhaustion. This makes you incredibly dangerous opponents. Dangerous. Think about it from our perspective. We are used to enemies who fight with great intensity for short periods. Powerful attacks followed by recovery time. But humans never stop coming. You pursue your goals with mechanical persistence until you achieve them or die trying. Jake received a formal summons to Commander Thoxil's office. He found the massive Ursoid, reviewing personnel files and military reports. Sit down, Morrison, Commander Thoxil said. We need to discuss your future. Jake took a seat in the chair. Across from the commander's desk, your performance on Kethmer has attracted attention throughout the Galactic Military Command. Admiral Nexara has recommended you for immediate advancement to Advanced Special Operations Training. Thank you, sir. There is more. Earth status? In the Galactic Alliance is being reviewed. Your government has been invited to provide military advisors for several important operations. It seems the galaxy has developed a new respect for human capabilities. Commander Thoxil leaned back. In his chair, I must admit I underestimated your species badly. I saw humans as weak creatures from an easy world. Now I understand that Earth is a death world that produces apex predators. We are not predators, sir. We are just persistent. That may be the most terrifying thing I have ever heard. Sajak's communicator chimed with an incoming message. The text was from Earth's military command, requesting his immediate report on galactic training methods and alien capabilities. But there was another message that made Jake smile. It was from his younger sister back home, asking how his summer camp in space was going. If only she knew that her big brother had just changed the galaxy's understanding of what humans could do. "Permission to ask a question, sir?" Jake said. "Granted. How many other humans are in exchange programs throughout the galaxy?" Commander Thoxel checked his datapad. "According to our records, 47 humans are currently serving as cultural ambassadors, military observers, and exchange students across 18 different star systems. And they are all being underestimated, like I was." "I suspect so, yes." Jake stood up from his chair. "And I think the galaxy is about to get a very big surprise." "What do you mean?" "Humans are competitive, sir. Once word gets back to Earth about what happened here, every human in the galaxy is going to want to prove they can do better." Jake headed toward the door. "We do not like being shown up by our friends." As Jake left the office, Commander Thoxel realized what he had just heard. 47 humans were scattered across the galaxy, all being treated as weak newcomers from a soft world. All of them were about to demonstrate that humans were actually apex endurance predators from a death world. The galaxy was not ready for what was coming, Commander. Thoxel reached for his communicator to send an urgent message to Galactic Command. They needed to warn everyone about what humans were really capable of. But first, he made a personal note in Jake's file. Recommend immediate promotion to instructor level. Someone needs to teach the rest of the galaxy how to train like a human. Outside the office, Jake walked through the academy corridors where alien students now stepped aside and watched him with a mixture of respect and fear. The weak human from the soft world was gone. In his place stood something the galaxy had never seen before. A human who had decided not to quit.